In this video, we are going to solve problems on loops. Well, what are loops? In some circumstances, we are required to execute one line of code over one time. So that's where we use loop. Now let's look at the first question. The question asks us to find the sum of all numbers divisible by 5 or 3 in given list. Where here's the list for using for loop. Now we'll be using the for loop, but before designing the loop, we need to define some variables, like sum. Well, sum equals to 0. We do not want this action to be repeated over and again. We just make it equal to 0 once, and then we will add numbers to it repetitively. So we need to define where this repetition starts and ends. Now, what we're going to do next is to build the loop. First we write for number in given list. Now when we do that, we tell the computer to take those values in this list one by one and execute the block of code under this line of code. Now what we're going to do here, let's say what does it ask us? The question asks us to find the sum of all numbers divisible by 5 or 3. So let's now check it out. In order to check it, we need to use an if statement. Say if the number when divided by 5 is equal to 0, or the number when divided by 3 is equal to 0 as well. Now, if any of these conditions are true, we need to add this number, the number which is taken from here, to the variable sum, equals to sum plus number. Well, after doing so, what's going to happen? Let's speculate. Now, Python code our code will define a variable called sum, which is equal to 0. Then enter to a loop. It's called for number in given list, right? So in first iteration, number variable will be equal to the first element of this list. And it will, now here, number is equal to 1, the first element. And then it will check if 1 divided by 5 has a remainder of 0, or number divided by 3 has a remainder of 0. Well, that's not the case. Well, it will go back and take the second value inside of this list. And it will do the same thing since it's not divisible by 5 or 3. It will skip that part too. It will take the third element, it will take the fourth element, and when it takes the fifth element, the number will be equal to 5. And then it will check if the number is when divided by 5, the remainder is 0. Well, it's true. When 5 is divided by 5, the remainder is 0. Then it will execute that part. So our number variable is equal to 5. So that is why it will add the number 5 to 0 and make it equal to the sum, the variable sum. Now the new value of sum is 5 because 0 plus 5 is equal to 5, right? And then it will keep going. It will come back here again and take 6, do the same things, and 7, 9, and 20. And 20 it will add the 20 as well up till the end. After this, after iterating through all the elements inside of this list, this block of code will be executed, and it will skip that part and will go to the 10th line. So what we're going to do here, well, we're going to print the sum to see what the value is actually equal to. Now if I print that, well, I don't know if you can see it. As you can see, it is 95. Let's move to the second question. It says, write a program that asks the user for the next number until the input equal sign is given. After getting the input equal sign, the program should find the mean value of all given values. So in order to find the mean value of a given bunch of numbers, we need to know the number of values, the count of numbers, and the sum of all numbers. So when we divide them, we will get the mean value. So in order to do that, we need to define some variables. Those variables which we do not want to be iterated. We want them to be defined only once. So that's where we use user input. Nothing, we haven't got any kind of input yet, so that's why it's empty. And then we have another variable called sum, because we just defined it. We're not going to make it 0 every time. It's outside of the loop. And then we have another counter variable, which is again is equal to 0, but for the first time it will not be like that. It will be increased as the time goes. And then we start doing the loop. Now, so what we're going to do, this time we're going to use a while loop, and I say while user input is not equal to equal sign, then keep doing something, right? Now we're going to define what we are going to do. Now we are going to ask user for the input over and over and over again. And we have to check if that input is actually a number or not. So in order to do that, we are going to do a if statement. So we're going to say if the user input dot is numeric. This is a function of a string, and what it does, it returns a Boolean value stating whether if it's numeric value or not. For example, if the user input say equal sign, well, it's not a numeric value, so that's why it will be false, and that if statement will not be executed. And then we will write the block of code under this if statement, and it is as such. Well, if this user input is a numeric value, what we're going to do is to add to this sum value the float version, the float version of the user input. Why did we write float? Because the input is in string format, but we cannot do mathematical operations on string, so that's why we need to use float. We need to convert that into a float value. And then each time we add a value to the sum, we are going to increase the value of input count by 1. So this will continue until the user inputs a equal sign. After the user inputs an equal sign, this loop will be ended. And then we will get out of this loop and calculate the mean value. What is the mean value? We will, in order to find the mean value, we are going to divide the sum by the input count, the number of times for which we asked the user to input a number. And then what we're going to do is to print that mean value is, well, it is mean. Now let's think how it will work like, how it will be like. Now let's run and see. Now here, let me resize it a bit. Here the computer asks us to input a number, and we say, for example, 1. And here what happened? It said while the user input is not equal to equal sign. And then it checked the user input. Well, it is in fact not equal to equal sign, so it just kept doing it. And it got a number input here from us, and we inputted 1. The computer checked if this user input is numeric value or not. Well, 1 is indeed a numeric value. So that's why computer started to execute that part. What the computer did here was to add the float value of 1 to the variable sum. The previous value of sum was 0, but after adding 1 to this 0, the new value of some variable is 1. After doing so, we're skipping to the next line, which says input count plus 1. Because we inputted first number, this first value, we add 1 to the count of the values here. Now we add 2. The same goes on and on and on again over the sign equal comes around. And we say equal. Well, enter. What's going to happen now? Well, after entering equal sign, it stopped calculating it. It just didn't ask the number again. What happened here? Well, when I set user input is equal to, well, equal sign, it just came here and asked if the user input is a numeric value or not. Well, indeed, equal sign is not a numeric value, so it skipped that part. It went here again and asked if the user input is equal to that one, that equal sign. Well, because this is equal to the equal sign, well, equal sign is equal to equal sign, computer stopped executing this part because we have a condition that it works only when it's not equal to equal sign. And then we skipped to that part. We found the value of mean value by dividing sum by input count and print this value of the mean value of this variable in here. So that's how it works. Let's run another code and do a bit more values around here and say equal sign here. Well, that's here. That's how it works. Now we're going to solve the last question. Write a program that prints the first n number of elements in Fibonacci sequence. Well, what is a Fibonacci sequence? In which the next value in the sequence is defined by the summation of the previous two values. Here, when we add 1 and 1, we get 2, 1 and 2, we get 3, 2 and 3, we get 5, and so on and on and on. But first, we need to define the values which we do not want to be defined more than once. Well, we get the number, the first n number from the user, and then we define the initial values in this Fibonacci sequence, from which the computer will start to calculate and add and find the sequence. Because the sequence is endless, we need to make an algorithm that repeats itself as much as we want. We will use while loop for that. We say while the length of Fibonacci is less than the length of Fibonacci list is less than the amount we actually desired. So, and then what's going to happen? The program will execute the codes under this line until the length of Fibonacci is just as much as we wanted here. And now we will define a variable called first, and we will get the second last element of this Fibonacci sequence, and we will define a second value in this sequence, and this second value is going to be the last element in this sequence, and we will append a new value. We will create a new value by adding these first and second variables. So what it actually do is to take the second last value, which is 1 here, and then take that one, which is 1 as well, and append a new value to this list by adding those two, which is actually 2. So when we add 2 here, this list will look like something like this. And the length of this list is 3. And if we keep repeating it, and when we say first, the second last, which will be 1, and last 2, and we add them up and make another 1, which is 3. As you can see, in each iteration, the value of our Fibonacci list, the length of our list, increases, and it increases until it reaches the value of n. which is actually a desirable behavior. Now, after then, we will create a for loop to print each element in the Fibonacci sequence. To do that, we say for element in Fibonacci, and then print out the element. But wait, what if we asked the first element here, like this one, right? We don't want the whole list every time. We're going to take elements just as much as we need it. So because it says n elements, we are going to slice this list and make sure that it is from 0th element to the nth element. It will only consider elements from 0, the index 0, to the index n. And n is not inclusive, so yeah. And this program should print us the Fibonacci sequence as much as we wanted. Wait a second, we lost the semicolon here. Column here. And yeah, that's it. When we say 5, well, for first 5 elements of that sequence is going to be printed out. 1 and 1, when we add 1, we got 2. When we add 1 and 2, it's 3. 2 and 3 is 5. It works perfectly well. And we ask for the first 5 elements, which is obviously 5 elements here. When we say 1 element, well, it will just print the first element. What if I print 0? Well, it will not print anything because 0 is 0. And then if I say 100, well, we'll get the first 100 elements of Fibonacci sequence. Thank you for watching. See you next time.